Welcome everybody to the Emerging Consumer Trends in Food and Beverages. My name is Adam Norris. I'll be your host tonight, co-hosted by Rodney Heath, my colleague. Rod's just going to open us up with a few comments, but it's great to have you all aboard for this, our first webinar in quite some time.
Thank you, Adam, and good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of kicking off proceedings, and I've got to say, what a nice way to bring the curtain down on what has been an absolutely beautiful day here in Melbourne town. My name's Rodney Heath, as Adam said, and my role at Monash Food Innovation is the Business Development Manager for Education and, for tonight, Industry Partnerships. And I really hope this webinar finds you and your families well in these strangest of strange times. And Monash thanks you for committing your time to this virtual innovation congregation. I'll bet somewhere within all of our remits, in all of our job descriptions, we have a shared ambition, and that is the responsibility of keeping the embers of innovation glowing. Innovation takes many forms and continues to push the human race forward, and I wouldn't want to work in any other industry. Food and beverage innovation is the pillar of sustainable development and critical to Australian and world economies. Food innovation, sustainability and security play a key role in addressing the challenges of healthy communities, geopolitical insecurity, and of course, the ever-present climate change. To transition Australian communities to sustainable food and land use systems, Monash has committed to co-creating and applying research innovation and education excellence, led and facilitated by Monash Food Innovation, acronym MFI, and we don't take this responsibility lightly. And it's great to energise our database and have you all with us again tonight. We are strong in number, over 250 registrations. It's an amazing effort and calls out a couple of hypotheses on my behalf, if you just entertain me for a moment. Firstly, that forums of interesting topics and highly sought after guest speakers will always be in demand, no matter what the medium. And secondly, people have been gathering together since time began to learn and enjoy each other's company, and webinars are the necessary modern evil or adaptation for this need, at least for now. It was more fun when we could be face-to-face and break bread, and we haven't forgotten that way of life either. But maybe there's a place for both in future, and we never stop learning and adapting. Anyway, times are changing, and this seminar is about to start, and it would be remiss if I just didn't thank straight up front AIP, Australian Institute of Packaging, Kantar and Global Data. Their businesses are to find out what is happening on the world stage, and not in the least Australia, and share it with us. They are a formidable lineup, and these businesses and bodies are the bluest of blue chip in the land. So Adam, that's my preamble. It was probably a tad long. I got excited because we're all together again after so long. Over to you, my friend. Take us through what we have this evening.
Thank you, Rod, and I'm sure everyone will forgive our excitedness on this wonderful topics and speakers that we have tonight. So as Rod said, we have a jam-packed evening for you. So bear with us, put your seatbelts on. We've got an hour of great speakers in front of us. Now you'll have questions along the way. Please feel free to type them into the chat box. We will respond as the presenters go through, and we might even have a little bit of time on the back end to answer some of the bigger questions if they arise. But other than that, look, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for the evening, Denise Hamblin from Kantar. So Denise, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself and start your presentation.
Okay, let me just get the right screen up. So how does that look? We're ready to go?
Perfect, Denise.
I loved the preamble, and I agree. I'm a bit excited, actually. I can only see a few faces, but I know that a lot are out there, and probably a lot of familiar ones too. So it's good to be kind of back in the virtual space together and talking about the things that we are so passionate about and that we love so much. And I'm glad that I'm starting really, because I'm going to start really broadly and talk to macro trends here and have a look at, what is our new normal? I mean, we have been disrupted, haven't we? And think about the implications really for brands and products in the innovation space. So macro trends, a little bit around COVID and the impact, and then really spotlighting on the environment. So Rod mentioned sustainability before, and that's really high on the agenda. Also the impact on expenditure, so spend, and also our priorities around health. and finally just the role for brands in all of that. So let's get started. Some of you may find this framework familiar. We've been sharing it over many, many years. We started tracking social values longitudinally since 1999. So it's been kicking around a little bit, and it lives on, which is great. But businesses would come to us and ask about trends. I guess the complaint was that it was so observational all the time. It was really looking at things that were happening at the time. Clients were just desperate to know further out than that, 3, 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years, what can we plan for and what really is ahead. So the best and brightest in our business got their heads together and came up with the Millennium Monitor and this framework that I'm going to introduce here and kind of step through as we look at the implications for food and beverage and for innovation in general. So it's really important to know what's coming up. It's also really important to know when to act. I remember looking at a trends deck a few years ago, my head fell off. There was 80 trends in it. You really need to know which ones are the ones to pay attention to and when to act. And you need to also understand, who are we actually targeting with each of the trends that we want to prioritize. So that's really important as well. And the framework here will help us understand that and start to think about planning into the future. It is academically based. It's based on values, and we like to use the Schwartz body of work, but it's quite similar to others in the area in terms of social values that we have. There are a lot of different values that coexist at any one time, but as a group, as a family, as a community, as a market, what we tend to do is have a predominant value that we share, and that helps us progress things. It helps us tackle challenges and move forward as a society. And those predominant values actually kind of move around the dial. They evolve as we look for new and better way forward. And the interesting thing is, as our values do change over time, it's our expectations and the brands and the products and the comms that we want in our lives also change. So there is a big implication for that. And there's a real power in understanding values and how they evolve. So it is evolving. And the interesting thing is, we can look at this model in a number of different ways. I mean, it has those different poles as the values move around, from an individual focus on the left to that more community focus on the right. And also it moves through times of optimism or encouraging growth and times of pessimism or inhibiting growth. And we've kind of tracked this back to mid-17th century. I do not have time to go all the way back there, but what I will do is whiz you through the last 100 years to give you a flavour and bring you to the point we are now, which is where we will really jump off. So looking at Australia and looking top right, this is an era of enjoyment. So you're up in the positive space, you're focusing on the community, and the values here are really about really enjoying life. And not letting anything get in the way of that. But what tends to happen in each of these 4 eras is you'll have a series of tipping points that drives us out of that time and into the next. So in the 20s and 30s in Australia, it was the Great Depression, and it was the lead up to war that drove us down into a time of conformity. And we go down into that time where we're really valuing safety and security, familiarity, and everyone having a role. But it's pretty conservative, and as new challenges arise, we need to find new and better ways to deal with them and solve issues. And the younger generation comes through and drives us into the next era, which is one of rebellion. You can see the picture of Woodstock there, fun times. It's also the most innovative time because we are courageous and we are looking to start from scratch, reinvent everything, and really find that better way. So all the good thinking happens here, but we're having a really good time. It's not until we go up in the model again, and this time to a power era, when actually the rubber hits the road and we really start to make progress as a society. It's hard to kind of be elite all the time, so we go into enjoyment, and around it goes. So in Australia, at the top of the model, when we started measuring it quantitatively and qualitatively, time of the Olympics, it was the mining boom, it was the baby boom, and this desperateness to connect with the community, and the collision of that with social media or technology meant that, you know, the Facebooks of the world, etc., really thrived. But like it happened 80 years before, where we had the Great Depression and the lead up to war, we had the 9/11s and we had, the GFC that drove us kind of down into a time of conformity. And this is really where we are now and where we have been for a little while. Lots of negative rhetoric as we entered into this era from politicians, stop the boats, etc. Concerns about the environment, and we'd really, trusted the government and large institutions to solve that for us, not happening. And some more distrust really growing as we kind of lose our manufacturing, and certainly the spate of those, royal commissions and all of the ones that we've had over the last decade really signals that distrust growing as well. And for Australia, when it, distrust kind of creeps its way into sport, who forget this picture, we know that we're really in the depths of something like conformity. So in the 6th iteration of the Millennium Monitor, this was in 2018, we saw that the majority, the largest proportion of values was sitting in conformity, and it all made sense. We knew exactly how to, innovate against and communicate to this value set. But of course, we were disrupted. And the very interesting thing about when this happened, and we thought, let's just go in and have a look at the impact on values here as we went to our second lockdown. And what we saw was this intensification of conformity values. We had no choice but to listen to the government. We had to follow the rules, and we were really good at doing that most of the time. And I'll share a few other things with you in terms of what COVID has done and the mark that it's leaving on us from a consumer perspective and our behaviour. One interesting thing as we've tracked it over this time, nearly 2 years now, is that our concern about our personal health being impacted has slowly decimated, if you like, but what's actually increased and is larger is our concern about an economic recession. And that puts pressure on our choices every day. And that'll come in handy when we talk about this at the back end. We also, whether it was scarcity, there's problems in supply chains. We can't get our loyal products easily to hand, and we try other things. The interesting thing was when we did try other things, and sometimes that was a private label or what have you, it was often as good as, if not better, than the brands we'd been loyal to before. So what a shake-up for brands in this time. We're looking to different brands. We're looking to different platforms and e-commerce. We're paying more attention to products on sale and paying more attention to price. And we're also paying more attention to the origin of products as well. So we talk to a lot of clients about if you're Australian grown, if you're Australian made, even Australian owned, it's time to talk about that now. We are more positive from products that are made or grown in Australia, less so for European, but holding steady, and much less so for regions and countries such as China, as we're illustrating here. There's impacts also that we're seeing in the home in terms of our behaviour. The majority of us impacted in terms of how we prepare and consume food and products. A lot of trying to be healthy, but also a lot of snacking as well. So we're kind of confounded a little bit in all of that, but certainly behaviour has changed. And one that I thought was quite interesting, because I know we've got some packaging, parties and attendees here this evening, and some interest around sustainability, is some of the changes in our behaviours and feelings around that. So in terms of, purchasing sustainable products and sustainable brands, using compost and things where we can feel that we can actually execute some control and contribution, and eating less meat. You can see those green bars there. That's all the increased behaviours. The one on the right-hand side, which has a bit more red on it, that's the amount that we're trying to decrease single-use plastics. So sustainability is kind of back on the agenda after our first initial shock of COVID last year, which is good. It's very positive. I think another big change is obviously how we're kind of buying and accessing products. This has been the biggest change in terms of e-commerce, has been for food and beverages. Only a third of us are saying that it's a good or excellent experience online. So there's certainly a gap to close there, but just interesting in terms of how behaviour and expectations are changing. and they will change into the future. That is the expectation of many of us. And the areas that these changes will endure is around not only the hygiene, not only the eating healthier, we wish, we hope, we plan, but also around the whole online virtual connections. So whether it's social media, whether it's online shopping, whether it's connecting with each other in this way, we do feel that that is going to be enduring. So all of these things are things to really keep in mind, as we go. So now, 4 weeks ago, kind of hot off the press, we went back into field to see, that was a very big, intensification of conformity values that we saw there first going into lockdown. Where are we now? Well, where we are now, we're back in 2018, basically. We've kind of gone to that intensification and shock, horror, and we've kind of come back down and settled back down into where we were. And really what that does is it gives us a real future focus on heading into rebellion and what that actually means for the next 3 to 5 years as the mass starts to transition towards that space. Remember, it is a courageous space and one full of innovation and new ideas, and really throwing that caution to the wind and going for it. So really an exciting time ahead. In terms of conformity, we do over-index in baby boomers in this space. We know, what we want to achieve in life, and we work really hard to achieve that. In rebellion, we are kind of spearheaded by the Gen Zs and our millennials in this space. And it's a really different space. I'll walk you through some of the unique qualities of this time ahead that we are seeing now. But a lot of it's around this feeling of simplicity. We want less and we want things tailored. Make our lives easier is really one of the big call outs in this space. The power era, the smallest at the moment, but incredibly interesting and one to watch. The first adopters of technology, whilst everyone else is worried about the cost of living, these guys are lying in bed, awake at night, worried about AI taking over our lives. Or maybe they know something that we don't, but certainly one to watch. And finally, an enjoyment. And it does over-index in Queensland. Narrator, I think you said you were in Queensland. So maybe you could give us a thumbs up, maybe if you're in this group. But if you want a bit more enjoyment, maybe move north. It really is all about prioritising a good time. We know that there's problems in life, but it's not our job to fix them. Let's just have a good time and connect in society. So there are different groups of people and different groups of values, and we're really in that main conformity space, but we are heading to rebellion. So a couple of implications for you as we go. Just keeping an eye on time. So someone tell me when I've got a couple of minutes left so I don't ramble as I talk about all of this as well. As our values evolve, so do trends. So in the past, what we've seen a lot of success in, products that are really exuding, and packaging that's really exuding craft and artisan type qualities that are really authentic and down to earth, and that are nostalgic, for example. But rebellion and where we're heading is a very different space. It's much more science-based, it's sustainable, it heroes less waste, and it's about customization, simple, stylish, and really something that is individual and for me. So really that's where we see the trends going, and we know what is ahead of us there. In terms of the environment, we all care about the environment, and Australians care about similar things. The difference of where we are now and where we're heading is who's responsible for that. And increasingly what we're doing is going to be trusting less in, or relying less in, kind of large institutions and establishments to kind of solve it for us. And instead what we're going to be doing is really taking it upon ourselves to solve these issues through the choices that empower us. And that's where we start looking to packaging. That's when we start looking to brands to help us make those choices and make a difference. In terms of spend, I wanted to show this because I think it's really exciting. We did see significant differences in our data. It's important because we're stressed about, this recession coming upon us. We're trying to manage our money. Few of us think we're going to have enough to, retire on. So what do we do with our money? We've got to be careful. In conformity, what we find in the data is that we tend to seek lower prices for the same products and brands. Again, safety, security, familiarity. But very different in rebellion. We are significantly more likely to try new and different products that provide us better value for money. And by value for money, we don't mean cheapest thing on the shelf. We mean things that provide value to us and is worth every cent that it costs. So in terms of health, it's also a changing space. It's very important to most of us, but only 60% of us think that our level of health is probably satisfactory, particularly now. Lots of comfort food happening in my household. In conformity, what we think about really is about maintaining health. We worry about chronic health, and we think about health solutions as being that one size fits all. So whatever's good for the community, it's good for me. The diets that over-index in this space are the lower cholesterol, low sugar or no sugar type diets, but very different again in rebellion. So now it's, health's all about feeling good. It's about balance. And we over-index in starting to be concerned of mental health. It is about personalized solutions and alternative solutions and finding alternate diet types. So here it's about the flexitarians. That really over-indexes in this space, as does, dairy-free type diets as well. And it's kind of like moving from the health stars to moving to a DNA-based diet. And I know there's a bit of that kind of happening, but I think it's a really good example of the shift that we're starting to see. Just winding up, so I've got a couple of slides left. I thought I'd just mention what we're seeing in the data around the role for brands, because that is changing as well. Important to note that, people still want to see innovation and people still want to see advertising. They want to be communicated to, they want to be knowing what's going on and what's out there, absolutely. But the role for brands is changing. So kind of upfront, being practical and being realistic, helping consumers in their everyday lives, that kind of stays up there towards the front. It hasn't really changed. But where we do see the changes is coming through is in brands being, examples and guiding the change that we want to see. Also in reducing anxiety and, understanding consumer concerns. So being connected, being empathetic, and you being part of the change that people want to see in life. The advertising that we want to see is, what brands are doing to help the community, what they're doing to help their employees, what they're donating in terms of charities, what they're doing for the environment and the impact they're having on the environment around them. Again, these are kind of call to arms in terms of brand purpose and how we connect with people and their evolving values. So I'm just going to wrap up now with a few of those kind of takeaway points. And I hope I've set it up nicely for the next kind of presenters to give a little bit of basis of where Australian consumers are coming from. So the new normal is that concern of a recession. What do we do? Well, we need to make sure that, we're ensuring choice of our products, of our offers by superior quality or value. In terms of the e-commerce, how do we provide that superior customer experience? It's not there now, but how do we do that? And it's, how do we kind of get the senses going and the appetites going in that space? For localism, if you've got it, flaunt it. Call out the local credentials because it's very appealing at this time. We know people are spending more time at home. So how do we cater to that? We had a client we were working with, huge campaign around this on-the-go foods. And we kind of pivoted and started looking at how we create that as a product for, at-home consumption. In terms of health and well-being, we're really looking at that functional space or fortification and appropriate packaging or delivery as well. In terms of the sustainability, look, we're just a lot more increase in terms of wanting to lighten the impact on the environment and make those choices and have those actions and contribute to, a better planet and a better future. So how do we help consumers and empower them to do that? And finally, just as brands, thinking about how we do help guide change, explain and inform to consumers, and how do we describe that positive impact that we're having as a business on the people and the environment within which we operate. So there's some of the key takeaways. I know that was a bit of a whirlwind. I've got lots to talk about because we're all passionate about this, but happy to answer any questions and yeah, take it from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Denise. And yes, you do actually have a couple of questions in the Q&A box and the chat box, but I'll forward them on to you.
Thank you.
I found that very insightful, and there are a lot of key takeaways there, really. But I found the really interesting statement was the value for money and how our traditional thinking is to go to premium, but that's actually not the case when people are looking at value for money. So very insightful. Thank you, Denise. All right. So without holding it up anymore, we're going to go on to our next speaker, Narrator Kelton from the Australian Institute of Packaging. Narrator, I'm going to pass over to you. Great, we can see your presentation. Fantastic, take it away.
Sorry, it's just got a little bit of a delay on the...
That's all right.
Must be because I'm in Queensland.
Having too much fun.
The internet's enjoying the cocktails in the evening.
Just bear with me because it doesn't want to change. Let me just jump out and try again. My apologies.
No trouble.
Let me go this way.
Is that better for you?
Can you see that?
Yep, that's coming up.
Yay, my apologies. It's definitely because we're having far too much fun up in Queensland, and I do apologise to everybody that's in lockdown for that. Now, I think it's fantastic that I got to follow Denise, because number 6 in Denise's is what I would like to talk about, but particularly around food waste. And you're probably sitting here thinking, well, what has food waste got to do with packaging? Well, it has a really, really important role to play in minimising food waste, but not just that, it actually helps lower the environmental impacts of all of our carbon footprints. Now, most of you already know these statistics, but I think it's really critical that we put these back in your head if you don't. So 30% of all food that's produced all the way around the world gets wasted. And most of that food is unnecessarily wasted. It ends up in landfill, and it is food that we could be giving the 793 million people that are starving around the world. And this is a really, really critical environmental concern that we have all over the world. And socially, we need to close the food gap by 56% by 2050. And environmentally, food waste impacts sustainability. And what I mean by that is, not only is there 8% of greenhouse gases coming from food that's lost and wasted, but the land area the size of China is used to grow food that's lost and wasted. And 1/4 of fresh water that's used by agriculture goes to food that's lost and wasted. So that has a huge environmental impact. And then when you look at this issue globally and also locally, global waste is a $1.6 trillion problem. And that's $500 million in production and $500 billion that all of us here today are doing, because it's in consumption and in households, and that is unnecessary food waste. But when you look at food loss and waste, you also need to understand that every country around the world, developed and developing countries, sees their losses and waste at different parts of the supply chain. So when you're looking at this image on screen, you're looking at the Navy. Now, Navy is where countries are finding their losses are in production. The yellow is handling and storage. And then all those bright blue areas, which are most of the developed countries around the world, Australia and New Zealand included, is in consumption in the households. So let's come and have a look at what the issues are in Australia. It's a 7.3 million tonne issue in Australia. And most of that sits in either primary production or households. And again, this is all going to landfill, and it could be helping people that need it. So what does that look like? Well, this is what it looks like, guys. This is what all of us waste every single year in Australia. That is one person's waste that ends up in landfill. That's 298 kilograms of food unnecessarily wasted that's going to landfill and having a huge environmental impact on this country. So there's 5 ways to create value out of food waste. And the one that I want to talk to you today is about prevention and reduction. And that's the role of packaging. Now, packaging has a role, and there are a lot of consumers out there at the moment that are very critical about plastics and packaging, and a lot of it is for all good reason. But we do need to remember that packaging is designed to protect, contain, preserve, and travel the product all the way through to the household. And what's important about that is safety. It's about health and safety, and it's about protecting the people and making sure they don't get sick. And also, what can we do to not lose food across the supply chain? But there's this challenge that we've got in the industry, and we have 2 targets that we're trying to meet at the same time. And it's about finding the balance. And for any packaging designers and technologists on this webinar tonight, it's really hard. So on the left, we've got the 2025 national packaging targets. And on the right, we have the national food waste target. And somewhere in the middle, we have to be able to find the optimum sweet spot. So what I'd like to talk about is the sustainable packaging design principle number 3, which is designed to reduce product waste. And this is where food waste sits. And what we call save food packaging design is a little bit more of an intuitive and innovative way to design the packaging to minimize food waste all the way across the supply chain. And it does need to be more innovative, more intuitive than standard packaging, because we're trying to make sure that we're designing the packaging at the start to not waste food anywhere across the supply chain. And if we can do that at the start and design better packaging, then when it gets to the household, it's going to minimize food waste. And it's about finding that optimum sweet spot in the middle to make sure that we don't underpack and to make sure that we don't overpack. So we don't waste packaging materials, but we also can't waste food. Now, I won't bore you with this slide, but this is something that I love talking about. Always make sure when you're designing packaging that you have life cycle assessment to make sure, and particularly when you're designing food packaging, just to make sure that the environmental impacts of the food, the production of the food, distribution all the way through the household, and the packaging are at optimum. So the AIP have been working on a series of safe food packaging guidelines, and I won't go into all of these because we don't have time, but there's a 5-point principle that I'm happy to share with you. And basically what it is to try and help people that are designing packaging, safe food packaging, to make sure that they're minimizing food waste wherever possible across the supply chain. And what we mean by that is we're looking at design to contain and protect the product from spoilage and damage all the way through all stages of the supply chain. We then want the designers to consider making sure that they're preserving and enhancing product appeal and extending shelf life, because extension of shelf life is absolutely critical when we're trying to develop intuitive, safe food packaging. We want to make sure that it has consumer convenience and that we don't waste food in the household, and particularly in handling in the household. We want to make sure that we are communicating effectively to consumers to handle, store, prepare, and reuse food products. And that's everything from on-pack, off-pack communication, all the way through to 2D QR codes, to make sure that we're communicating all the way through how to store their food, where to put it, in what temperature in the fridge, on their counters, where's the best place to put it in their fridge, and just to make sure that if they have food, what can they do with it, recipe ideas, etc. And then this number 5 is what Denise was talking about. It's that balance. It's a balance of between making sure that we can meet food waste targets and also sustainable targets. And I'm not going to go through all of these because I don't think we've got time tonight. But this is just some of the things that when you're designing your packaging, you need to consider. So when you're looking at extending shelf life and product appeal, there's a really, really underutilized area in active and intelligent packaging. And that's everything from sensory labels, TTIs, which are time temperature indicators, scavengers and absorbers. And there's fabulous innovations that we should be incorporating into our packaging to potentially extend shelf life, communicate more effectively to consumers, and ultimately minimize food waste. In the area of convenience, it's really, really important to have accessibility and inclusivity in all of your packaging design. And a lot of students at Monash University are currently busy learning about this at the moment, but it's really, really important to make sure that things are easy to open, they're easy to tear, grip, handle, reclose, reseal, because that's where we ultimately waste a lot of our food in the households. And portion control, which I'll show you some examples of in a sec. The other things that are really important is on-pack, off-pack communication for date labelling. Understanding the differences with best before and use by dates. Teaching all of your family and friends the differences, because there are significant differences between the two. And if we can do things like that and we can educate our communities and our tribes around us, we are actually going to minimize food waste, because that's a low-hanging fruit, and that's really about consumer education. And then obviously balancing the targets. But I'd like to show you what it really looks like. And this is the exciting part. And I apologize because this is just before dinner, so it's going to make you hungry. So the AIP have an annual awards program called the PETA Awards for short, but it's an Australasian Packaging Innovation and Design Awards. And we run this for Australia and New Zealand, and all the brands get together. And this is a special award category that we have, and it's a reasonably new category. And we want to do more in this space. We want to encourage brands to do more in this space, because this is a really fantastic area to have a lower environmental impact and to help with sustainability issues around the world. Now, I'm going to show you a very quick video about this Junie lamb, because it's the best way to show it.
Meat products ending up in landfill contributes to over 20% of the carbon footprint of total food waste. An additional issue for meat products is leaking packs, which cause unnecessary food and water wastage. Products sent from Junie lamb were arriving damaged at the next point in the supply chain, and non-conformance reports indicated that lamb packaged in previous shrink bags were failing and yielding food waste in the order of 4,300 kilograms per week. The significant volume of water required to produce the defective product was also being wasted in the previous packs. The move to Cryovac TBG put an end to leaking packs and food and water waste for Junie lamb. The vacuum shrink barrier bags are designed to provide a significant shelf life of 90 days. This is particularly important for the export market, where long chilled shelf life is required. The design provides tough puncture, tear and abrasion resistance, high oxygen barrier properties, with built-in bone guard protection in areas that need it most. By identifying the areas of the bag at risk of puncture abuse based on cut packaging, bone guard can be purposefully positioned on the bag to protect these areas. The 150 bone guard patch ensures the efficient use of materials while delivering maximum protection and shelf life. The lamb will better withstand the rigours of production, storage and distribution, and that also means less waste. In this B2B application, multiple, up to 6 meat cuts are packed into Cryovac TBG vacuum shrink barrier bags, driving better products to packaging ratio and decreasing the amount of packaging used. The bag is Australasian Recycling Logo compliant and recyclable through soft plastics collection programs.
And then one of our latest winners was also Simplot, and this one really will make you hungry. But this is another intuitive design that's just come out, and it's just to put it in perspective about how we can design better packaging that can ultimately minimize food waste.
To meet the needs of the food service channel, Simplot developed Edgel Super Crunch, a new chip designed to stay crunchy for up to 40 minutes throughout the challenging delivery process. To complement and aid maintaining the crunch during delivery, Simplot designed an innovative and sustainable pack that has a raised and ventilated floor and just the right amount of ventilation on the sides and top to allow steam condensate to escape while retaining heat. This pack utilises the stack effect, where air is drawn into the carton at the base and then vents at the top of the carton, allowing moisture-filled air from the chips to rise and escape. The relatively shallow carton is designed to allow the chips to spread out so they are not on top of one another. The one-way venting that the stack effect promotes works well in balancing heat retention and moisture escaping, promoting quality for food delivery. The product has instructions on the pack as to how to use it and how to effectively extend the life of the chips to keep hot and crispy, and therefore not wasted. This packaging has been designed to extend the life of the product through keeping the product crispy and hot. If the customer finds that the product is cooled too much, the packaging has been designed in such a way that it can be reheated in a microwave for 20 seconds, which extends the life of the product, reducing the risk of spoilage due to cold, soggy chips. The pack was designed with tamper evidence for product security and is stackable, allowing for easier distribution of bulk product and reducing the risk of crushing. The board is fully recyclable, FSC certified, and has been optimised to reduce the amount of board used.
So I know that I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to really quickly show you a couple of really cool examples. This is a really fantastic example of a farmer that had premium vegetables, mini vegetables that they were growing, and COVID hit, and they had ultimately been selling all of them to restaurants, and they were throwing them in the bin and they were ending up in landfill. So what they did was they commercialized their premium vegetables, and they're now a commercialized product on shelf. And so they came from a problem of the lockdown and COVID, and they came up with a commercial solution. You obviously have the things that I was talking about: easy open, easy to grip, easy to tear, easy resealable, small portion control, freezer ready, easy to grip, particularly for people that have aged care, hospitals, people that have disabilities. Really important. Large legible font, easy tear, grip, pull tabs. This one is a fantastic example. This is a New Zealand avocado producer that was ploughing their bruised avocados back into field because the retailers simply wouldn't accept them because they didn't meet the standards of the local retailers. They didn't want to waste the food, so they commercialized the bruised avocados into a guacamole paste, and it's now a successful export marketable product with an extension of 90-day shelf life by the design of the packaging. And then the last one is wool cool. This is wool. This is wool from the underbelly of a sheep that can't be used for food and clothing. It's now been repurposed into a replacement of single-use, unnecessary, problematic materials like EPS in e-commerce solutions. Sheep wool is naturally insulated, biodegradable, compostable, and has a fantastic extension of shelf life. The AIP has released a 2-part research report with RMIT University that's now available for anybody to access. And this is about the current state of the industry, the brands and the manufacturers, and what they truly think about food waste and, say, food packaging. We have a lot to do. We have a long way to go, but I do believe that, as you can see from all the innovations, there are some fantastic solutions already out there, and we just need to continually remind people that food waste has a higher environmental impact in the world than packaging waste does. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with is on the 29th of September, there is a International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. Have a think about what you can do to lower your environmental impact in your home and your family, and really think about what you buy, when you buy it, and how much you buy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Narrator. Once again, it's great to see some actual practical outputs against some of the bigger trends emerging in the 20s and off the back of what Denise was mentioning. So thank you very much for sharing those examples. Now, we're going to move on to our last speaker, Mera Jahangir from Global Data, who's going to round out our session for us and share some lasting insights from her perspective. Mera, if you'd like to rest our screens, fantastic. I can see it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adam. First of all, I'd like to thank Denise and Narrator because they've made my life and my job very easy now. So I'll be focusing a lot more on details that Denise had already helped me share with the larger audience on the macro level side of things. I will be focusing a lot more on emerging categories, not just in 2021, but what are the next 5 years looking like? And how are ingredients driving a lot of innovation in the F&B and non-food space? So let me know if I am running out of time, and I'll try to squeeze it in the last 15 minutes that we have. But I'll quickly touch base upon the post-pandemic world, and this really is going to give us a good idea of how the next 10 years, like a decade, is looking like. I will be focusing on the trending ingredients that are defining emerging categories that we're seeing in the food and beverage space. And I'll be leaving you guys with a few thoughts to ponder upon over dinner with a glass of wine, maybe. So what is a post-pandemic world basically looking like? So definitely new needs have been created, but so are the new challenges that are there. We've all been a lot more online in the last nearly 2 years now, and it seems like we will be staying at home more. Now, that doesn't mean that we will not be able to move around, but more from an aspect of traveling. Like business travel doesn't seem to be revived anytime soon. Staying healthy is a top priority currently, and is expected to be a top priority in the next couple of years as well. The way we treat ourselves is expected to change, moving away to broader holistic and wellness aspects. Share of wallet is important, and Denise already mentioned how value for money concept is critical. And I'll touch base on the next slide across different categories. How has our consumer survey really supported that in Q2? I will be talking about hygiene on a more broader level, and definitely focusing a lot more on sustainability from not just a packaging angle, but labeling is becoming all the more critical in the light of claims that we are seeing, especially claims including free from claims as well. So picking up the good value for money concept, I would just like to highlight across different categories. Again, you can see on my left-hand side, I've picked up some of the critical food categories, alcoholic, non-alcoholic beverages, beauty, grooming, healthcare, and some of the other critical categories as well. Now, when we had asked our respondents around the world, again, this is a global survey, what does good value for money mean to you when buying the following types of products? And you'll see between 30 to 45% respondents said that a good value for money means high quality products or high quality ingredients. So this is where it becomes all the more critical to understand the importance of ingredients in the minds of the consumers. So I've just tapped a couple of ingredients into bigger buckets in terms of well-being, environmental and social responsibility, novel and experimental, consumers, authenticity, heritage, and self-branding. Now, some of these areas have already been mentioned by Denise, but I'll just take you to a greater detail, and before I step into the innovation side of those categories as well. So we've done a lot of consumer surveys, but this one's really important on the functional ingredients. And we are seeing functional ingredients are emerging in a lot of products when we talk about FMCGs and locally sourced products as well. So when we ask respondents, consumers who find the following very or somewhat appealing, so you can actually see on my screen that between 65 to 75 respondents said that digestive health is quite critical to them. Ingredients that have immunity boosting claims are quite critical, and relaxation is becoming all the more important because in our own ways we are feeling quite burnt out, either burnt out by Zoom or not being able to move around freely, but definitely it has started to take a toll on the consumers and the people as well. Holistic health is a priority, and when I say holistic health, it is a lot more related to mental well-being as well. So we are seeing ingredients that are known to be more concentrated on higher vitamins or nutrients to be more popular, having functional properties as well. Better for me and better for the planet are the ingredients that fall into these two buckets are gaining popularity, especially in the alcoholic beverage space as well. We're seeing a lot of penetration of zero alc, low alcoholic beverages, and some of the organic alcoholic drinks becoming more popular as well. And that is all with regard to replacement in terms of sugar content. And we're also seeing it in the food industry with the meat substitutes. So again, plant-based movement and all of it is quite related to your better for me and better for the planet. Again, focusing a lot more on sustainably, ethically sourced ingredients as well. Consumers are bored of their traditional choices. There's a lot of potential in terms of novel and experimental penetration. So we're seeing a lot of focus on food and drink flavors with complex or multiple flavor combinations. So when I share with you the innovation deck and slide across different categories, you'll be able to see how even flowers as an ingredient are penetrating different categories as well. On this slide, I like to focus on authenticity and heritage. We are seeing a lot of demand around products that are authentic, products that have a high heritage value as well. And that is all because people are inspired by other cultures, and not being able to travel is also kind of promoting the demand for products from other countries. So there's a lot of potential in the export markets, critical export markets, and Australian products are considered to be quite prestigious when we talk about key food and beverage and household cosmetic categories as well. Last slide on self-branding before we venture into innovations. Consumers have found a way of actually resonating with brands through social media. So anything unusual is really appealing to consumer these days. And this is again coming out of our consumer survey from Q2 2021, that unusual colors in terms of food and drinks are gaining popularity, and it allows people to express themselves better with brands that they can resonate with in terms of their values. What is emerging? So we've already talked about some of the key ingredient trends that are penetrating the consumer landscape. Starting off with dairy, we have seen some interesting innovations in the dairy space. So there has been a cheese that has been launched in Romania that has lavender flowers in it. So lavender is quite popular as an ingredient in cookies, cakes, or ice cream in the past, but this is the first time that we've seen it in cheese. In China, we've seen Yili has introduced a milk drink which has osmanthus flowers in it. So quite a unique and novel experience there. In Brazil, we've seen dairy-free coconut yogurt, which has been launched with flavors of cranberries and hibiscus, again appealing to the health-conscious consumers. So we've seen globally, as a result of our consumer survey, that 13% of consumers are saying that they're finding floral ingredients to have an appealing flavor, especially in dairy. So that's quite interesting to explore, and we're expecting a lot more innovation in this space. Savory snacks. We've seen a lot of interesting innovations in this space as people are operating from home, and there is a lot of demand for interesting snacking. So we've seen this product that came out of Germany, and you can think of all the different sort of assortments in this product. So there is apricot cubes, roasted soybean, pumpkin seeds, almonds, and walnut kernels. So again, it's quite suitable for vegetarians. It's a healthy snacking option. And also very important to highlight here that fruits are quite appealing to a very large population. So when Global Data did its Q2 survey, again, we found out that 29% of consumers find sweet tasting savory snacks to be very appealing. Coming to confectionery and desserts, I'll just pick up this example from India, Hershey's Exotic Dark Blueberry and Acai chocolate. So you can actually see that it is appealing to more than 59% of Indian consumers because it's considered to be a novel product out there. And 40% of consumers actually, when we did a global survey, claimed that they buy superfoods all the time or occasionally given the health benefits. So the perception is there, and COVID-19 has only accelerated that perception across different categories. Coming on to meals and meal component, we're all familiar with quinoa and the health benefits that are associated with it. But we're seeing the blend of quinoa across different meal and meal components, as you can see on the screen, from quinoa mac and vegan cheese that was introduced in Canada lately, to quinoa kale burger in Austria. And again, there is a product, in sandwich form as well in Switzerland. So again, it just gives us that confidence that consumers are open to experiment and try out different product ranges in terms of the ingredients being launched as well. Bakery, cereal, and morning goods. So across these three examples that I've picked up from India, Germany, and Russia, we've seen the penetration of chia seeds in combination with some of the other ingredients as well. So that is quite interesting to see how appealing chia seeds have been because of the benefits associated to the larger consumer base. So multifunctional, multi-benefit ingredients are becoming all the more popular. Juice drinks, and smoothies. So I'll just refer to the very first example here, that is from Japan. So this juice has 30 different vegetables, and it claims to prevent blood sugar level spikes. So we are seeing a lot of health claims being quite popular as a result of COVID-19. And more brands have now understood how important labeling has become to the consumers. We are seeing more and more consumers paying a lot of attention on labeling and really seeing how healthy the product is and if it will really help them to manage their immunity against COVID-19 and some of the other health concerns that are out there. In Poland, we've seen fermented beetroot juice, and fermentation is expected to have a lactic acid bacteria, and it is supposed to maintain the health for a longer period of time. So we are seeing a lot more innovation in this space as well. And it's quite interesting to see that some of the lines are really blurring. So while we're working with alcoholic drink companies, they're really looking into some of these categories as well, because they're quite emerging for them. And while we work with Pepsi and the likes of Coca-Cola and all, they're looking at alcoholic drinks with zero or no alcohol content. So it's interesting to see how the market is really adapting and adopting to some of the changes that we're seeing in the industry. On the carbonate side of things, I'll just pick up this example of a soda that has been introduced in UK, which has blueberry muffin ingredient in it. Now, I would prefer blueberry muffin the way it would be, but I could just tell you that this is becoming a popular drink, and it's a different way of consuming. It's a different sensory experience as well. So again, brands and manufacturers are becoming all the more creative, and we're seeing there is a market for that. In terms of sports and energy drinks, I'll pick up the very first example from UK of Monster Punch energy drink. So it's an energy drink with a flavor of tropical fruit punch. And again, the important area here is the tag. So it has been tagged as gluten and GMO free. So again, a lot of health and wellness related claims that are becoming all the more popular. In terms of hot drinks, I would like to focus on the very last innovation that I've shared on the slide from Turkey. So you can actually see that vanilla flavored tea that has been launched in Turkey claims that it has 200 million probiotics in every cup. Now, again, this is related to immunity boosting and gut health and the rest of it. But you can actually see it is all supported by consumer survey that we've done, and consumers in Turkey believes that it has a strong positive impact. Innovation trends and spirits. We've seen a lot of innovation in this space. I'll pick up the example from US, which is around hard seltzer, which is an organic seltzer, and you can actually see that the claim is that it's free from sugar and carbs. So when it comes to alcoholic drinks, we are seeing a lot of these free from claims, and every can only has 80 calories. So we are seeing a lot of responsible messaging across alcoholic drinks and spirits specifically. In terms of wine, I would like to highlight the very first innovation here in terms of ingredient. So the wine from China basically is designed to promote good sleep. So that's quite interesting because it contains ingredients that are supposed to have positive health benefits and are known to be aiding in sleep as well. So it has chamomile flowers, grapefruit, black currant, and some of the other ingredients as well. Coming on to beauty and grooming ingredients, I thought it would be interesting to highlight some of the innovation that we're seeing in this space in terms of avocado, probiotics, prebiotics, mushroom, and food waste. Narrator was talking about food waste, and I couldn't wait to share the next slide with you because food waste is now being used in a lot of beauty and grooming related product ranges and categories. So just as an example here on this slide, you can actually see a product from Planet Revolution. It's a cleanser, and it comes from food waste actually. So it's really catering to the sustainability and ethics trend globally. Private label. So we are seeing a lot of interest in private label as we work with Tesco, Walmart, and some of the global retailers as well. So I've just picked up some of the examples mentioning that it's just not food and beverage actually, but it's a lot of focus on cosmetic toiletries and household care as well when it comes to private label, really tapping into health and wellness related claims and being more creative as well. Lastly, just a few takeaway points here, talking about how the ingredients that I've already shared in terms of the categories, how are they really panning out? So ingredients can enhance the sustainability of a product formulation, and we're getting a lot of requests from our clients, particularly on this area. Now, given the COVID-19 pressure on packaging and on overall sustainability, it is becoming all the more important. We need to leverage on ingredients to tap into emerging health concerns amid COVID-19, and we've already talked about it on the previous slides. We are seeing a lot of interest in terms of traditional ingredients being combined with emerging ingredients to come up with new innovative product ranges. Then there's a lot of focus on the aesthetics of product formulation as well from an ingredient perspective. And lastly, we are seeing a lot of adoption, linkages between benefits, ingredients, and consumer health. And that is definitely going to define the consumer landscape for a lot of different industries and categories as well. I'm happy to take any questions, Adam and Rod, if there are any. Thank you. Hope we are on time.
Thank you very much, Vera. No, that's all right. We're a little bit over, but I anticipated that happening with such a great star-studded lineup. I just would like to make one last point on what you presented, Mera. It's so important, the ingredients. And look, we're in Australia where the sort of provenance of being able to access, Indigenous ingredients is starting to really grow. Think about that in line with what Denise was saying about the adoption of local made and promoting that on your products. And you've got a partnership waiting to happen for your business. So look, that brings us to a wonderful close on a good evening. As you can tell, I'm turning into a pumpkin. I'm going blue because it's past 6 p.m. But no, we really appreciate everyone's participation and involvement. There's been some great questions and answers from the speakers throughout the evening. But no, I really just want to thank you from Monash Food Innovation. Thank you, Narrator. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Mera, for being speakers in this wonderful webinar. And yes, I know that it's been quite fast paced, but the recordings will be shared with everyone post this session. If there are any little bits that were missed, you can go back and watch them there. But
and if you love this one, we're on again on the 22nd of September, Adam.
Yes, we have our Future of Australian Packaging, where we once again be joined by Narrator Kelton. That is on the 22nd of September. Free registration. We send it out via our newsletters. You can subscribe via our website. If not, please feel free to email us and we can share the event details. But other than that, everyone, thank you very much and thank you for attending.